Hare Krishna, dear friends and well-wishers. Welcome back to the Bond of Love interview series hosted by ISKCON Vaishnavi Ministry. My name is Prema Rupa Madhavi Devi Dasi. I, along with my family, serve at ISKCON Portland in Oregon. This wonderful interview series, as you know, is an opportunity for all of us gathered here, virtual, to hear from Srila Prabhupada's spiritual daughters about their connection to him and their experiences in Krishna consciousness. Today, we have the fortune of hearing from none other than, drum rolls, Bhakti Devi Prabhu. Bhakti Devi and her husband of 53 years, Brahmatirtha Das, of perfect questions and perfect answers, received initiation from Srila Prabhupada soon after the first New York Rathayatra in July 1976. Over the years, Bhakti has served as a mother of two sons, as well as Gurukula headmistress and teacher, vegetarian cooking instructor, interim Miami BBT director, typesetter, among many other services. At age 44, Bhakti was inspired to attend the University of Florida. There she secured 4 academic degrees culminating in a postgraduate degree in marriage and family therapy. Since then, she has dedicated more than 2 decades assisting couples and families in crisis. Her professional experience includes time as a licensed marriage and family therapist, a certified parenting coordinator, a collaborative divorce professional, a family mediator, and a certified divorce coach. Today, Bhakti's practice is focused on her work as a Florida Supreme Court certified family mediator and co-founder of Family Mediation Solutions, a successful mediation practice for couples choosing a peaceful divorce. This is a voluntary process couples can choose, which requires clear and nonviolent communication, a focus for the best interest for their children, while preserving the dignity and respect of all parties throughout the divorce process. So I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Bhakti Prabhu.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. And thank you to Rukmini Priya also, and to the Vaishnavi Ministry. I am so grateful to be here and to have the honor of speaking about Srila Prabhupada. I'd like to just start off by giving you a little bit of background information on how I came to Krishna consciousness, which was different than the way most people came in my experience. And also, even before I start with that, those listeners who are so kind, for you all, I just need you to know that I'm coming out of 2 very serious illnesses that required intensive treatments of chemo and radiation and surgeries. And so I must have left many brain cells on the operating table such that today I'm left with recall difficulties. At sometimes I get stuck and I won't be able to pull up a word. And I know what I want to say, but it just won't come. So if you would indulge me and not try and fill in the word, I assure you it'll come to me. But I do need to take a breath and just let the word come. And it does. It does. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I'd like to go ahead and tell. Oh, and by the way, I am now in remission. I'm doing so well. And yay, I'm on my path to wellness. So thank you. Okay, so I came to Krishna consciousness through my husband, Brahmatirtha. You may hear me refer to him as BT because now that he's director of the Bhaktivedanta Institute here in Gainesville, Florida, everybody knows him as BT. That's the devotees. And then people outside of the devotional community, everybody calls him BT. So So if I say that, you'll know who I'm talking about. I came from a background of a Jewish family, and I met my husband on a blind date, and arranged by our parents, which was kind of unusual for the hippie generation. I was not a hippie, and I think that is the dividing line between me and the majority of the devotees who came to Krishna consciousness. I came to the temple because I wanted to be with my husband. I did not choose. If it was my decision, I wouldn't have chosen to go to the Krishna temple, but I got hooked. I got hooked on prasadam. I got hooked on devotional service. I loved cleaning. So everybody knew that and put me to work, and I loved that. And that's what brought me back, the prasadam for sure. Week after week, on Sundays for the feast, I would come back, and it was wonderful. And so, yeah, so that's how I came. It wasn't that I was vying to become an initiated disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And back then, the devotees were very enthusiastic and very bound and determined to make everybody around them do the right thing according to what they understood was the right thing. And so I was getting a lot of instruction from a lot of people. And, you know, and they kept encouraging me to give up my job. I worked as an assistant to an ophthalmologist for many years. And I loved my job. I was happy in my job. My husband and I together were searchers within Judaism. That was the religion we were born into. So on Saturdays, we would go to the temple, the Jewish temples, and we would go to services, and my husband would ask these amazing questions, and it was like stump the rabbis because they couldn't answer his questions. But when we came to Krishna consciousness, those questions were answered. And that was another thing for me. When I was young, I'd had a lot of death in the family, young people, cousins who died young. And there wasn't an explanation that satisfied me. When I heard the explanation of death as we know it in Krishna consciousness, it made so much sense. Nothing else made sense. So there was another pull, that the answers I was searching for my whole life were now being answered within Krishna consciousness. Okay, so now you know the backstory. You have questions for me?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I was wondering, or the viewers would love to know, how did you feel in Srila Prabhupada's presence?
Ooh. Well, when I first came, Srila Prabhupada, the awe and reverence the devotees had for Prabhupada, I had never witnessed. I don't even think I saw the Pope, maybe the Pope, receiving that level of awe and reverence. But there was more, it was fear-based. What I witnessed, what I observed, and keep in mind this is subjective, I just saw a lot of fear to be in Prabhupada's presence. And I kind of took on that, and because I didn't know Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada spoke, I had great difficulty understanding him because I'd never met anybody from India before. And I would say his accent early on, this was like 72, 73, it was much more pronounced than much later years, 10, 15 years later. And so, so my, lost my train of thought. Okay, that all changed. That fear changed to something else when I met Srila Prabhupada for the first time. And it was July 4th, 1972. My husband had just come back from India. He'd already had the conversations with Srila Prabhupada. We learned quite a bit after the fact that there was a book that was going to be published and called Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. My husband had great difficulty dealing with, oh, you're Bob Cohen, because people would corner him and want, we'd be ready to leave the temple and somebody would corner him with questions, and he was so happy to answer their questions and tell them about his experience. But I wasn't so happy because I had to work the next day. And he was in graduate school. He got what's called a petticoat degree. You familiar with that? Petticoat degree is when the husband or the partner gets their degree based on their wife or partner's ability to pay for their schooling. So, yes. So that was the story there. Okay. So July 4th, 1972, a dear friend, Atreya Rishi, who was then a GBC, and he had an enormous amount of time with Srila Prabhupada and kindly asked on our behalf if we could speak with Srila Prabhupada. He willingly said yes, and so we went into his quarters in the Brooklyn Temple, and you had to go downstairs. This room was although maybe we didn't go, no, I think we went downstairs. It was a very long room. And so Trey Rishi told me before I went in to meet Prabhupada, when you go in to see Srila Prabhupada, you pay your obeisances to the floor. I looked at him and said, I'm sorry, but I don't do that. I wasn't there yet. I hadn't said Hare Krishna yet. I was still very green, very new, and even going into Prabhupada's room was, I'm not going to lie, I was fearful. I was intimidated. I had so many people on my case about everything I didn't do right. I heard about, and I just feared this would be more of the same. And I went into Prabhupada's room. I folded my hands. I bowed my head, didn't say a word, and I walked to the back of the room. I was in blue jeans and a shirt, and Prabhupada didn't say, where's your sari? Or why are you not paying obeisances? Prabhupada was welcoming to me. And I sat down. Srila Prabhupada was in front of me quite a ways away, a table in front of him, maybe 10, 15 sannyasis to his right. My husband sat between Prabhupada and me on the side wall. And Prabhupada, the first thing Prabhupada said to me was, so you're interested in Krishna consciousness. Now, I knew he was talking to me, but I had no idea what he was saying. And I was so embarrassed that I didn't understand what he was saying. I didn't have to say a word. It was pretty clear. Prabhupada looks at my husband and he says, so you'll translate? This is English we're talking about. I was so embarrassed. But you know what? He wasn't upset. He didn't. He just kind of made a joke out of it. And it was so delightful. This was a person I really liked. I I had great respect for him, and I only knew him up close and personal for 5 minutes. It was really wonderful. And so the conversation went on, and after a bit, a young woman came into the room with a very large bowl of what looked to me like golf balls. And I had a great difficulty processing why she would bring golf balls to Prabhupada, what the significance of that was. And during this turmoil in my head, Prabhupada says to me, "Come, come." That I understood. Got up, I walked to Prabhupada's desk, and he said, "Hold out your hand." So I held out my left hand, to which Prabhupada said, "No, other hand." Gently, kindly, compassionately. He knew I knew nothing. So he took one of these golf ball thingies and put it in my hand. And it was dripping. I remember it dripping, and I didn't have a napkin or a tissue, so I put my other hand underneath to catch it so it didn't drip everywhere. But I didn't know what to do with it. So Prabhupada motioned to me like this. It was incredulous. I just couldn't process, how am I going to get this ginormous golf ball in my mouth? And why would I put that in my mouth? But anyway, it becomes clear seconds later. I pop it in my mouth. When I bite down, I heard a squeak on my teeth. Never had any food do that before. And then when I got the sweetness of this, my eyes bugged, and Prabhupada just, when I tell you he laughed out loud, it was funny to watch him. It was funny to be in my position. I wasn't embarrassed. I felt completely accepted for who I am and how I am. And at that time in my life, when I was searching, it's exactly what I needed. Mm. And so how I felt in Prabhupada's presence was his kindness and his compassion. It was all encompassing. It was really wonderful. I knew I could study under this person. I knew this person was my teacher. It was very clear. So the end of that meeting came, and my husband had prepared his parents' car. It was a real fancy Lincoln Continental. And he and I spent the whole weekend days prior to this day, when he knew he was going to be driving Prabhupada to the airport. We polished the car and sanitized the car and put incense in the car. And we went over the top to make this perfect for Srila Prabhupada. So the time came when everyone left the room, and I wanted to thank Prabhupada, but I couldn't think of how I could do it in a way that it would have any meaning. Mm-hmm. And so as the last person out of the room, I folded my hands, I bowed my head, and I said, "Srila Prabhupada, thank you. Hare Krishna." First time I ever said Hare Krishna. Without a second delay, Prabhupada responded, "Jai." And I knew that he knew that we knew that it was my first time to say Hare Krishna. And then I started chanting 16 rounds. So that was the real beginning of my path back to Krishna. And so, yeah, so it comes back to what I felt in Prabhupada's presence was safety, security, kindness, compassion, and just acceptance. And it made being a devotee of Krishna something really good in my life. Did that answer your question?
You did. It did more than that. Like you share like a favorite memory of yours with Srila Prabhupada as well. So thank you. Maybe it is a good segue. We all know Srila Prabhupada had innumerable qualities. Would you mind sharing some of your favorite qualities of Srila Prabhupada?
Yeah, I think I might have already covered the kindness and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two that absolutely stand out the most for me, but it comes up again. But it comes up again in a later something I wanted to say actually next. And is it okay to segue into that?
Please.
Okay. When our son was born in 1974, my husband and I, he had finished his schooling. He was between graduation and job, and we had 3 months to follow Srila Prabhupada around the U.S. And so we went to so many temples.
Mm-hmm.
But this, one of the first temples we went to was the New Orleans farm called New Talavan. So we were in New Talavan, very austere farm. And, oh, this is funny. The weather was horrible. The weather was pouring rain, and we were on a highway, desolate highway between, we had been in Florida, and we were headed to New Orleans. And we left at 5 o'clock in the evening because that's when Prabhupada was preparing to leave. My husband drove like a maniac to get to New Talavan on time. And this is in the years where the baby's infant seat was in the front seat.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm amazed he lived through this. But anyway, the rain was coming down in sheets. You could hardly see, you couldn't see in front of you, really. And so my husband was driving, following the lines in the road. And so I think we were going at a pretty high rate of speed, and he was passing people. And I kept saying to him, I don't think this is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I know you want to get there, but let's get there alive. It would be much better for us. And he said, no, we have to beat Srila Prabhupada there because we have to greet him. And okay. So I backed off. We got there in one piece by the grace of the Lord, I'll tell you. And we got there before Prabhupada. And he had left maybe 10 minutes before us.
Oh.
So one of those cars that we passed was Srila Prabhupada's car. We didn't know it, but... So we're in the temple waiting for Prabhupada. We give him everybody gives him a wonderful, warm welcome. And he sits down on the asana, and it's just garland after garland. It was just beautiful. And the first thing Prabhupada said was, there are some crazy drivers in this state. And some people were passing us in pouring rain. And I looked at my husband, he looked at me. We didn't say a word, but we knew that was the boss talking, and we got to be more careful. I mean, these bodies are temples of the Lord. So, but that was one thing that I remembered. And then the next day, I had Kirtan, our eldest son, who just turned 50. I was holding him in my arms, and my husband and I were talking about what we had to leave the next day. So there's certain things we had to work out. So I didn't see Prabhupada coming, but my husband said, here comes Prabhupada. I go, what should I do? He said, nothing, just stand there. So I had Kirtan. My husband offered his obeisances. And I folded my hands and bowed my head. By this time, I was offering obeisances, but I don't remember. I can't tell you the reason I didn't, but there was a reason that I didn't go to the ground. And Prabhupada walked over and he said to us, "So who is this?" And either my husband or I can't remember, said, "This is Kirtan Das." And Prabhupada took his hand and flicked Kirtan's cheek. Very nice, very nice. Oh, that just warmed my heart. And interestingly, that was Kirtan at 5 months. When Kirtan first started talking, just before he was 2, his first word was Prabhupada. So, and then of course, when he was fully verbal, he was able to tell people, "Prabhupada touched my cheek. I'm Mahaprasad." and now he's 50. Okay. All right. What else?
Quality of Srila Prabhupada, you were mentioning Jayadvaita Maharaj, you had a nice discussion with him.
Yeah. Jayadvaita Swami was very kind to my husband and I when we were first coming. He understood the enthusiasm of the devotees and how hard it was, more for me than my husband, because my husband, I don't want to say he was a celebrity, but he was given a lot more facility than was I. People made sure he had prasadam. People made sure he had a seat. People made sure, he got to be with Prabhupada when he was there. And when he wasn't, it was a different ISKCON. That's just the bottom line. And Jayadvaita Swami recognized that for me. And so he always made sure that he took prasadam with us when we were there. And we took our prasadam off of wax paper on the floor those days. Yeah. So we didn't know how to pronounce his name, so we called him Jayadevita, which comes from some lyrics of some song. But anyway, he allowed it. He had no problem with it. He smiled at everyone for everything. He was just such a congenial personality. And he farmed whatever questions that I had in a way that was palatable and I could understand. And so I looked so forward to those conversations when we were there on Sundays. And he introduced us to some couples in the community who also had children, or at least a child. One of them was Kanchan Bala and Madhusudana. And when they saw how difficult it was to take prasad at the temple with the hundreds of people that would come for the feast, they asked us to take the feast at their apartment. And that was just delightful. It was quiet and peaceful, and we could talk, and they understood the difficulties of being parents of a young child. And so it was devotees like that and others also who really made householder life more normalized. Most of the devotees were not married at that time, and were, I would say, intolerant of a child whispering in a stage voice or crying or being just their obnoxious self. And so I didn't have a lot of support from the single women, but from my married friends, I was able to get that. And that also encouraged me more on my path. How was that? Did I answer you?
Yeah. When we spoke earlier, you mentioned that statement he shared about the soul changing body.
Yeah. When I came to Krishna consciousness, he Jayadvaita Swami, I'm guessing by what he said, was pretty sure I was not going to get initiated. I might be very favorable to Krishna consciousness, but maybe not somebody who would take it so seriously that they would want to get initiated. And so the philosophy tells us you're not that body, you're the spirit soul. But on the day of initiation, there were 108 devotees who got initiated that day in at the Rathayatra festival, and there were 100 first initiates and 8 Brahmin initiates. And so after the initiation, we all had a big feast and sat with Jayadvaita Swami, and he said, "So you're a first. You're a first." And I said, "A first what?" He said, "You're the first time that the body has remained the same, but the soul changed." So we all got a good laugh out of that. And he still remembers that to this day when he sees me. So it's very sweet.
Maybe another question about Srila Prabhupada would be, how did you feel he gave protection to you and other Vaishnavis, and your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know if this fits, but I'm going to tell you a story. On the day of my initiation, Srila Prabhupada was in the building, and initially the initiation was scheduled for 8:30 in the morning, but Prabhupada wasn't feeling well. So everyone said, just rest for a few hours and see how you feel later. Worst case, you don't have to go. And so they kept postponing it and postponing it and postponing it, such that I think the initiation was like at sundown time. And everybody was getting kind of antsy because we were just chanting, and people had other services that they had to do. And so you didn't know, if I leave now, am I going to miss my seat at the fire? And so we're in the building that we were in at that time. On the 8th floor, which is the women's floor, there were 2 elevators in like a vestibule, and the women would just chant as if we were circumambulating Tulsi, but we weren't. We were just walking in a circle. And there was a woman who had a room right off that vestibule, and she was standing at the door talking to no one in particular, but so everyone heard her dissatisfaction with the fact that the men were the ones who got Prabhupada's association and had Prabhupada's ear, and they were the ones that they got the Mahaprasadam, they got everything, and we women were just stuck with nothing. And she just went on and on and on. And then all of a sudden, one of the elevator doors opened. I was standing right in front of it. The door opened, and there was Prabhupada standing with his hand on his cane, like this. And he looked around and he said, Jai, or Hare Krishna. Now I can't remember what he said. It was one of those. And then I yelled, Jai Prabhupada. And then the doors closed, and the women were ecstatic, but not the lady in the corner room. She didn't see. Prabhupada knew that the women were feeling downhearted. Hello. And he came. I just thought that was perfect. And so I can't say for sure that he provided protection, but he was certainly mindful of where where his disciples were, and the women disciples. He was very caring. And I have god sisters who have so many stories about that. And I wasn't able to get through to the people whose stories I know and really appreciate. And I don't want to tell somebody else's story without their permission. And so I'm going to just leave it at that. But suffice it to say, Prabhupada, my experience with Prabhupada was, it comes back to his kindness, his compassion, his appreciation for whatever the devotees did. He was the gratitude. He and everything. If you gave Prabhupada any kind of what's the word? Some appreciation or anything, he took that and sent it right up to Krishna. You know, it was just beautiful.
Sure.
Yeah. What an inspiration. It was very special.
I also like the fact you were mentioning earlier, well, personally, with when we chatted, that even like the importance of paying attention. Like she missed that because she didn't, pay attention.
Yeah.
So how important that is.
Yeah. As a psychotherapist, I did a lot of training in mindfulness meditation and being mindfully aware of what people say. Because in psychotherapy, a tremendous amount of what you get is seen in body language. And also there's a lot in what's not said through words. And so my job was to try to pay mindful attention to that person to see if I can extract what's inside of them. Because another thing we learn as psychotherapists is that every client that comes over the threshold of your office comes with the answers to their problems. It's your job to extract that. And you do it, one of the ways to do it is through being mindful. And that helped me with japa. Mindful, not that japa was background music for my mind, which I'm working on that one still, but that I really strive to be mindful. That's my goal. And if I'm mindfully aware, then the hope is Krishna will show me some mercy, and I won't have to come back here again and do this all over again. So mindfulness is paramount to me in my practice of Krishna consciousness. And funny that it was paramount to me in my professional life. And also when, as a mediator, we work with very high conflict couples who really want to duke it out, as opposed to signing a contract that says, I will put my children before me or my partner, and we're not going to screw up our kids royally by being hateful and going through the court system and drag our children through that. And so in order to remain mindful about that document that they signed, they have to bring pictures of their children to every meeting. And when I hear they start digging their heels in, oh, no, I'm not going to sign off on that. No, she doesn't deserve that. He doesn't deserve that. Whatever is going on, I pick up the pictures of those children and I said, you signed a document saying you're going to put your children first. And immediately tears come because they know If I'm not mindful about sticking to what I signed off on, then we're going to tell them they're not appropriate for the work we do and send them elsewhere, because that is what happens. And so mindfulness plays out in my whole life, and I really like that. It's consistent, at least.
Thank you for sharing that, and I really needed to hear that about japa. Yeah, so it's Krishna's way through Paramatma making you talk about that and telling me to be more mindful. And yeah, thank you. I really love like you have so many qualifications, and I was telling you when you got really red when I said that, I noticed that you're almost done it all. One thing that stuck out, and the fact that you mentioned you love prasad, and prasad's what brought you back, and the fact that you were a vegetarian cooking instructor. Would you mind shedding some light on that?
Sure. I started to say we started the program in Ohio at the College of Worcester, and those cooking classes were so popular that I had to limit them to 35 people, because that was all that kitchen could hold. But the well, let me tell you how it even started.
Yeah.
I can't pull up his name. We talked about it. Sannyasi.
Hridayananda Maharaj?
No.
Oh.
From New Vrindavan.
Radhanath Maharaj.
Radhanath Swami. Oy. Okay, let it go, Bhakti. All right, so Radhanath Swami was living in New Vrindavan, and when he would just need to get away for a weekend, he'd come to our house. We were about 2 hours away. And we had a huge house right across the street from the College of Worcester, COW, Cal. And he taught me how to teach cooking classes. And it was, you just stick to the recipe, you stick to how you do it and what you do, and you leave it at that. You don't get into the philosophy. You don't get into, why the food tastes different from when you go home with the written recipe and it doesn't taste the same. But over time, when they would come with questions, it was time to talk about how come it's different. And I think that was the time when there was a movie about the meat industry. It had just come out. I can't remember the name of it. And we showed it to the class. And it was so impactful. I don't think anybody ate meat after that, after they saw that video. But Radhanath Swami he said he had the best. I think he did his classes in State College. I think that was when Lakshmi Moni might have been there. And he had such great success with people. But he was also, they were students. He had a very large following of students who became devotees over time. I didn't have the following of devotees, but it's funny. To this day, I still get Christmas cards from people who were in my cooking class in 1979, maybe 1980. Yeah, it was just it was impactful. They may be vegetarian, but they weren't ready to become Hare Krishnas. But that's okay. That's okay. They know how to offer their food. And we had to make sure that they had little bells, and because they would ask for them, and we didn't put anything on them. They came to us and asked. Once they ask, they're open. And so That's the story of the College of Worcester cooking classes.
I think this is a good way to maybe end our session here, unless there's something you're inspired to share, something more you'd like to share.
I just wonder, is it typical for listeners to ask questions, or?
I haven't seen anything come up, but
Okay.
Brahmatirtha Prabhu, he sent a heart. Brahmatirtha Prabhu sent you a heart.
Oh, I thought he was on the plane. No, no.
Facebook, he did.
Yeah, actually, I am so blessed. I love that guy. He's the best partner a person could have. He's just so caring. When I was going through my illness, there was not a time he didn't attend a chemo, a radiation, a doctor's appointment. He is so mindful.
Wow.
Now, he doesn't put dishes in the dishwasher mindfully, but that's a whole nother thing, and we forgive him for that. But he's a super mindful person, and I'm very, very blessed to have him as my partner.
I know why, but I teared up and I got goosebumps hearing that. I'm so happy for you that you have that.
Thank you. Thank you. I remember early on in the days when we were married and people were trying to split us up because it was Maya to be living outside and having outside jobs and Oh, Divya wrote. Divya came with me to the College of Worcester cooking classes. She's probably the reason why it works so well. This woman is empowered without a doubt. Thank you, Divya. So, yeah. So coming back to my husband, he's a gem. Oh, and he's just coming back from India right now.
Oh, really?
He said he can't count the number of people who have come up to him and begging, can we have a selfie? He hates selfies, but he does it because, it's the right thing to do. And so.
You were telling that people were trying to split you because you were working.
Yeah, I thought that's how you had to be. You just had to be detached. So, to express I love you to your partner was verboten. You could not say those words out loud. It was just too much Maya. And then we didn't want our children growing up seeing two really unhappy people. I'm going to tell you a little bit. Have we got time?
Yeah, we have a lot of time. Yeah.
The reason why I went into the field of family therapy was it started when my children went to Gurukula. They were in a Gurukula in Pennsylvania of 80 children. Of the 80 children, 5 of those children had biological mom and dad in the home. Of those 5 children, 2 were mine. So those statistics don't bode well for the Hare Krishna movement, that so many children are growing up with divorced parents or single parents or whatever the circumstances are. And I noticed also as a marriage therapist, the numbers of divorces in our movement exceeded the numbers of divorces in society. Like it used to be 50%. It's a little bit lower now, but we were at 55 or 60% of our relationships ended in divorce. And I was bound and determined to make a difference and change that. And I thought maybe if we could start having premarital counseling for couples, I understand it now is in place, but at that time it wasn't, to have premarital counseling to get people to understand, what are you getting into? What does it mean? What if you think this way and she thinks that way? Or, what if she wants children and he doesn't? How do you reconcile that? So, but maybe we made a little difference, but it's better, much better than ever. I've been watching the new Raman Reti farm, which is about 30 minutes north of me, and I'm noticing the numbers of families. When my husband and I came to Alachua, we started out in Alachua. There were maybe 6 people on the farm, and so that's how we got involved with the Gurukula, and we got involved with my husband started a flower business, which was so successful until we had a drought. The state had a drought and banned watering flowers, so that was the end of that business. But it was a good business for devotees, and we were so few families. But then over time, I think there's now like 1,000 people in the community, or maybe more. And the school, there are multiple schools now, not just one. And they're accredited schools. So it's amazing to watch the transformation.
When you were talking about like divorce rates and everything, I remember His Holiness Bhakti Vishwamba Madhav Maharaj once say, he loves Krishna, she loves Krishna, doesn't mean they love each other. So it's important that they get to know each other before they make this sacred vow. So.
For sure. Yeah. Yep. When I was doing that work, I had a questionnaire that was pretty in depth, and I know that it's helpful to people. What is that something I should be aware of?
Oh no, it's just
okay.
Yeah.
So that I think it's very important if people are embarking on a life together with someone, that they go through a premarital process, so they learn, how are we going to manage our differences? How are we going to negotiate whatever differences we have? And it's not all one person's decision on how things will be. So, because that's not sustainable, just in case you didn't know that.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking your time, despite everything that you're going through, and still having the faith. Like, people who go through whatever you've gone through, it's so easy to lose that faith, right? But you're still sticking on to that strong, and that's very motivating, and it really shows Krishna is there. I
Yes,
heard
it does, because I'll tell you, there are days when I'm hanging by a thread. That thread has got to be Prabhupada's thread, because if I what would I do? Where would I go? And it's very, this material world is not a fit place for a gentleman, Prabhupada says, or a lady for that matter. And when the difficult things come to us in our lives, to be able to see them as helpful on our paths back to Krishna is really tough. But if we can hang on and keep our journey, keep mindfully, with mindful intention, keep our journey going, we'll come out the other end and we'll look back on those dark days and be very grateful that you're still here to talk about them. Borijan Prabhu, a very, very dear friend, when in my darkest days was there to get me out of that well. He taught me a lot. I'm so grateful to him. And my god sister Divyananda, she is just, she's been a rock for me. So I have been supported by so many great souls, and I just pray I can keep being mindful and just don't fall off the wagon. That's
And this is Prabhupada's love coming back to you, right? Through your god siblings.
I'd have to say yes. I can't. Yeah. Yes, that's such a blessing, isn't it?
100%.
And I am so grateful.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we have this wonderful book again, A Bond of Love, Srila Prabhupada and his daughters. And thank you for sharing this book. And I'm very grateful again to the ISKCON Vaishnavi Ministry of North America for setting the series up so that the future generation, the second, third, fourth generation can hear and cherish all these wonderful pastimes. I know you couldn't go so much in detail in the book, but you took your time today and shared this much with us. We're so grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to those who are listening.
Haribol.
Haribol.